Hello and welcome to another one of the famous at this point Fight Site interviews. Once again, I am hosting. It's Ben Cohn. Joining me today, we have two guests. One is our very own Fight Site member, Matt Joya. And we also have Alex Ecklin, the co-founder of Masaskaya Jiu-Jitsu. Matt, Alex, how are you doing? How's everything?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm here with you guys, so I'm really good. Alex.
Thank you.
All right. First, before we begin, I wanted to make sure to tell everyone to please go visit thefightsite.com. You're going to be treated to a plethora of phenomenal articles and contents by fantastic writers and content creators. I really urge every single person who's interested in the analytical side of fighting to go and check them out. We have fantastic interviews as well. Also, make sure that you check out the Fight Site on Patreon. You can come and support us if you'd like. If you want, there's also some fantastic extra content that you'll be allowed to be privileged to see. You get to join the Discord server, ask questions on the podcasts. You can do fight study, whatever your heart desires. There's a tier for it, so make sure that you check out the Fight Site on Patreon. Matt, I'm going to let you take the lead on this. But the first thing I want to do, Alex, is ask you about your jiu-jitsu journey. Tell us how you got started in the sport. You know, I know that when I was watching the first year video, you talked about how you really didn't have a lot of competition success until you were a purple belt. Just tell us how you started, how you got to, you know, your competition success and the G roll, please.
I mean, I did originally from Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And like Eastern European parents, they believe that, you know, every kid should do martial arts. And, you know, my dad, he showed me blood sport when I was like, you know, maybe 7 or 8 years old. And then, you know, I did some karate. I did some judo. You know, I was kind of like a chubby kid. I was never like really good at it or into it. And then when I was a teenager, I was 17. I wanted to, you know, I had this like urge to do something. And I wanted to do martial arts again. You know, obviously UFC was also like a big inspiration. And I found a local gym in Brooklyn. It's, you know, where I still live, Brooklyn BJJ. And I was there for a couple of years. And Brooklyn BJJ, it's a great school, but they're not really into like competitions. They have like a different kind of focus. So, you know, I was interested in competing. So Vitor Shaolin had just moved to New York City at that point. And I decided to go check it out. And as soon as I checked it out, I really loved the training environment. And, you know, he was just building it up, building up the gym from scratch. And, you know, I started training with him, and I trained with him for, I think maybe like from 8 to 10 years, you know, quite a long, you know, time. And then a few years ago, you know, I'm and my partner Van, we decided to open up our own gym. And as of now, it's just where we're training at full time. So that's been pretty much my journey so far.
Matt?
All right. Thank you for coming on with us, Alex. You're most known for your G-roll system. How did you come to find out about the G-roll and develop such an intricate system with a unknown move of sort?
You know, like, I think, you know, even it's funny, you know, we you know, now I haven't taught for 2 months. But I felt like, you know, up until these 2 months, I was kind of getting into a real groove with teaching. And, you know, a lot of the students were able to retain a lot of the stuff that, you know, I was showing and all the instructors were showing in the gym. And, you know, I feel like, you know, I'm, you know, a few years away from, you know, really peaking as an instructor and, you know, being a good instructor, somebody that, I, you know, I myself would think is you know, a strong instructor. But with that said, I was always like a terrible student, you know, in public school and middle school, high school, like college, I barely, you know, and actually in jiu-jitsu too, you know, a lot of the stuff that like I was the person in class when Shaolin or others were showing moves, I'm trying to like, you know, see what else I can do or see something that's similar but different. And, you know, I'm not sure. I think it stemmed from that. So also when I was rolling, I was always trying to like, you know, find like different ways to do things. And, you know, I was always getting my guard passed, and half guard is just something that you kind of hold on to for dear life. And I would spend a lot of time there. And in Shaolin school, everybody specializes, you know, those that roll with Van and others know of the 110% pass. So a lot of people like that. It's like the weave leg, like weaving the arm in between the legs and pressure passing through. So, to combat that, I would start to cross my ankles, and then, Shaolin a long time ago showed this sweep, like a lot of people call it Shaolin Sweep. You grab the pants, you grab the sleeve, and then you kind of knock the person over with your knee, and then if they come into you, you do a backflip and you flip them backwards. That's the combination. And I try to like do this sweep in no gi. And, I just thought to myself, let me just do a push up because I don't have a sleeve to grab. And after that, it worked. And I just kept trying it. And my teammates started to try it. And, we started getting some success with it. And then, little by little, year after year, so to speak, the system, developed.
Okay. I know there is a large gap in time between your first G-roll instructional and then your second one that you released with Grappler's Guide. I can't recommend that one enough. I know the second one focused a lot more on leg entanglements. When did you start to add 4-1-1 entries or 50-50 entries to the G-roll?
Yeah, like Shaolin, he was a pretty traditional coach. He was way ahead of his time. When he was competing, and when he was teaching us, it was a lot of amazing stuff, like cutting edge stuff. But also he's pretty traditional sense of he doesn't really teach leg locks or leg lock defense. So actually, Van and I, we only started like doing leg locks and looking into it other than the straight ankle lock and other than a toe hold here and there at black belt. And it was like a new toy. So started to really enjoy it. And it became almost like a new martial art, because it opened up so many pathways and so many ideas and so many submissions, right? So it just all fell together because the G-roll also is susceptible to leg locks too. So I had to be on both the offensive and the defensive. So I feel like my knowledge expanded on that quite a bit, and that was yes, as you said, the biggest difference between the first version and the second.
So I know you worked under learned under Vitor Shaolin, and then for the second part of your career, you've been operating Master Skaya. How has it changed yourself as a martial artist, going from being under somebody to having to develop something all on your own?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because when I was training with Shaolin, like I was teaching there too, but like anytime there was an issue, and I was like, all right, go to Shaolin, talk to him. And now I don't have that luxury. So now people come to me with all sorts of issues, and I have to help them, and I have to that's my job right now. So that was probably the biggest change. Also, before I had no worries about anybody but myself. I can be purely selfish. I can just roll and not care about anything really except my own improvement. Whereas now I'm responsible not only for myself, but I'm responsible for others. So that responsibility is a very rewarding obstacle and challenge that I've encountered. But I love it. I think it's really awesome, and I'm all for win-win situations. Why not make myself better and make those around me better at the same time?
So I was watching your early today your battle with Nick Pace from the Rise Invitational.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your Kimura game, used both offensively and defensively? I know most people probably know you for the G-roll, but how is it learning like a Kimura system, which is probably more readily available knowledge-wise compared to the G-roll, where you're most likely the top expert in that one position in the world?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, there's a couple of people also that do very similar games too. The two of them are Samir Chantre and Kaio Terra. It's a little bit different, but it's almost the same stuff, And I don't really care about it or mind it. The G-roll is kind of like it's almost like a little bit of a joke. Kind of naming it, all that kind of stuff. Like I don't really care too much about it, but I do appreciate you saying that. And with that said, actually my first instructor, Gene Dunn, he was a specialist in the Kimura. And then actually when I first met Shaolin, I saw his highlights, so I assumed that his favorite submission was the arm triangle. And I remember, I was like a 19-year-old kid, and I came up to him with my eyes like this, and I was like, "Hey, Shaolin, so what's your favorite submission?" And he told me, he's like, "Hey, it's Kimura. I love the Kimura." And I don't know, I think the combination of both of my coaches really loving the Kimura made me like want to search it, all the time. And before doing the G-roll and before doing all that other stuff, I would just look for the Kimura from everywhere. And when I was a white belt, I remember there was a class with Gene, and he said, if you have a Kimura grip, never let it go. And I just stayed with that for the last 14 years. Like, I will never let a Kimura grip go unless the person escapes out of it, or unless I'm about to get armbarred. Otherwise I'm keeping on. I'm keeping it. And I know there's some legendary coaches and fighters in the world also that don't teach it as much, for valid reasons. And I kind of like that. I think I think the Kimura is much more than just just a submission, right? So a lot of people use it for transitions and use it to attack other stuff. So I really love it, and I think it's really cool too, because you can do a gi no gi, and you can do it from every single position as well.
So it seems that the biggest advent in both the G-roll game and the overall meta game in no-gi jiu-jitsu has been the implementation of leg locks. We've seen that with Craig Jones and his 411 honey hole or saddle position, and then the Lachlan Giles, of course, his legendary run, this ADCC. Do you have a preference for either position when it comes to attacking the legs?
What is the choices that I have, Matt?
Oh, the saddle position, and then the 50-50 / 80-20.
Yeah, I was kind of like, I felt like I was like a couple of years behind, because then I hear Lachlan saying like, the outside Senkaku, the 50-50 is, much stronger than the saddle. And I'm like, man, I just spent the last 3 years like trying to perfect my saddle. So like, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If somebody's like really good at escaping the saddle, it's hard to keep them there. And it's also much harder to get the saddle than it is to get 50-50 and some of the other leg entanglements. But still, I still prefer the saddle. I think it's really strong. And I think, besides Lachlan and Craig, the other person that's the biggest innovator for leg locks in the game is Eddie Cummings. And Eddie Cummings, I was studying a lot of footage on him, and he's been, he hasn't been on the scene lately, but the last that I've seen of him, he's made some, incredible advancements to the saddle, such as tucking the toe to the closed butt cheek. That makes it harder for the person to escape. So I think, if you have a really strong saddle, offensively you can do a lot with it. Plus, obviously you're safer within it than you are in 50-50, at least for me. Because I'm still working on my 50-50, both offense and defense.
So you just talked about watching Eddie Cummings. How much does tape study play a part of developing your game?
Like Van and I think both of us are kind of self-taught, to be honest. We learned a lot from Shaolin, and we learned a lot from the coaches that were there. And Van's game more so resembles Shaolin and the coaches there. My game is kind of like, all over the place. And, I took a lot of inspirations from Shaolin in regards to mindset, in regards to, how to fight, in regards to how to train. But as far as instruction goes and as far as techniques go, like I'm kind of just, all over the place and on my own. And it's largely due to tape study. I watch a lot of fighters, and I try to, just see little things that I like from each one, and then I try it, and if it works, I just get obsessed with it and, keep trying it over and over. Then I try to teach it, and I try to have other people, also be successful with it, and then kind of, let the ball roll from there, so to speak. But I think it's so important. And, just to add a little bit onto that, a lot of people watch instructionals. I do too. I think instructionals are great, but I think the most important thing to watch is actual fights, and just seeing, what's working and not working real time. And also it's a little bit less boring sometimes. I don't feel like I'm gonna, lecture and when I'm watching some fights, as opposed to, some of these lengthy instructionals.
Yeah, I've seen your breakdowns on the Masterskaya YouTube page. I can't endorse them enough. They're absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you.
So we were talking earlier about the 411 and or saddle position and 50-50. Do you think we're at the end of that evolution, or do you have any idea of where the leg entanglements are going to go next? Because we've seen Gordon Ryan have so much success at ADCC with using mainly back takes from those positions. So do you have any thoughts about where the leg lock entanglements are going to go next in the BJJ metagame?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what happened was there was a huge exploitation because a lot of people that were, world champions and, training for, decades, this was an area where they were lacking, and this was an area that they didn't really, look into too much. And a lot of people like Gordon and others came on the scene and were able to demonstrate how effective it is, right? And I think we're maybe a year or two away from the peak of the leg locks, where kind of everybody's on the same page, because it's kind of like, it's almost like business. Let's say there's a bunch of coffee shops in the neighborhood, and let's say one of them starts to, give you alternative milks. Like now they're going to give you not only regular milk, now you got oat milk and you got almond milk and stuff like that. And then the one next door, they start doing it, and then everybody's going to kind of just follow along. So I think that's kind of what's happening with leg locks. So I think we're at the point where like maybe 8 out of the 10 coffee shops have the leg locks, so to speak. So we're almost there. And I think people and others have said it before me, and I agree with them. I think the next step is going to be incorporating takedowns and incorporating wrestling and incorporating like positional control and pressure within jiu-jitsu, and using that to win fights. And that side with leg locks and stuff like that is I think going to be the deciding factor. And two guys that we see, like some young guys like William Tackett, he's kind of showing that now. He's being a lot of leg lockers with like pressure and passing and things like that. And I think that's going to be kind of the next trend, so to speak.
Do you think that guys like Nick Rodriguez and from Marcelo's Hudson Taylor, who came in and nearly only lost 2-0 to Cyborg Abreu as a purple belt, do you think it's going to be like an influx of ex-wrestlers and people like that who are really just going to come in and change the jiu-jitsu game again?
Yeah, I think so. And I think like two people that come to mind that are going to go down in history as the greatest, the Miao brothers. A long time ago, well, not even that long ago, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when they were purple and brown belts, they were heavily criticized for only doing berimbolos and only playing guard. And now we see we see how good their guard passing is, and now we see how good their wrestling is. Mm-hmm. And I think what's going to happen is a lot of guard players are going to kind of follow suit, and not necessarily are we going to see an influx of these wrestlers like Nick Rodriguez and Hudson Taylor, but we're just going to see more sport jiu-jitsu people incorporating wrestling and takedowns, and not getting swept, like keeping the top position, understanding pressure, understanding how to control somebody more. So I think that's going to be what's going to happen. And if we get more wrestlers like Nick Rodriguez and Hudson Taylor, that'll be awesome too. Well, I don't know. It'll be awesome for the viewers. I don't know for
the jiu-jitsu guys. It's not going to be so great.
Yeah.
Do you think that change in the metagame is going to mainly be at the higher weight classes, just because I know both of those guys are, of course, at the ultra heavyweight? Or do you think that's going to be something that starts there and then slowly trickles down to like 66 kilograms, 77 kilograms, based on ADCC rules?
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of all over. I think it'll be everywhere. It's interesting. You're absolutely right. Mostly we see less guard pulling in the higher weight classes. We see more wrestling and judo take exchanges in the higher weight classes. But I think little by little, over the years that may change. And it has to do also with the rules too. In my opinion, I think takedowns or a clean takedown at the very least in IBJJF and other tournaments that follow the rules should be 4 points, and I think that would incentivize people to train more takedowns, because it's much less risk to pull guard and we'll go for a sweep if that's going to be the same 2 points as a takedown, which may be risky, and it's going to be not enough return on your investment, so to speak, to train it and kind of add it to your game.
So do you think this development would be mainly towards ADCC or other paid promotions like Fight to Win, rather than IBJJF, Nogi Worlds, or competitions like that?
That's an interesting question. I'm not too sure. There are quite a few people that they compete in all of them. So it'll kind of trickle down, universally. But there are some people that just specialize in IBJJF, and they do such a great job at winning IBJJF tournaments with pure strategy. And we all know those competitors. A lot of times they're criticized. I don't criticize them because, listen, if you're going to go compete, you're going to do whatever it takes to win. But I think it's going to be kind of a universal. I think it'll be, little by little. And I think that will be one of the best changes to happen And I hope that's what's going to happen.
Ben, do you have any other questions on the G roll?
Yeah, I actually did want to speak specifically about the G roll, because one of the things that I really enjoy when I was watching your original G roll series is that I note the versatility of it, and you're consistent. You keep going like, well, okay, so we do this, and then he does this to stop it, and then we do this, and it's consistently a step by step by step by step. Over how long of a course? Over the course of how long did it take to really go through all of those stages? Because I assume that you learned all of these defenses by trial and error, and in competition and in training, people were doing these things to you, and then you're like, oh, this is how we counter it. Over the course of how long did it take to really develop all of those counters and attacks?
It took many years, and it took a long time. And also, I didn't do it alone as well. And because what happened was, I showed it to my training partners, and then, I was teaching. My primary source of income at that point when I was working at Shaolin was private lessons. So I would just teach it in privates, and what would happen is students would come to me like, "Hey, this happened," and then we would brainstorm. And a lot of times things didn't happen to me that happened to others, and we still had to kind of troubleshoot through there. And also, like, people started developing their own variations, and the instructional was an accumulation of that brainstorming. And as Matt pointed out recently, like, there was quite a bit, like there was, I think, 4 years in between the first and the second, or 5 years, and it was quite quite similar but quite different at the same time. And it's still a work in progress. When we return to the mats, we'll be back to brainstorming better ways to do it.
You brought up the Kimura, and I know that you mentioned a lot of instructors are not so high on it, and it's a personal favorite of yours and Vitor's and Gene's. Why, with regard to the criticisms of the Kimura, a very common one is that if your opponent is just strong enough, you're not getting that arm. What would you respond to people who say that? Like, is that, you said there are valid criticisms. Would you consider something like that a valid criticism? What are the valid criticisms in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely valid. We've all been there. We have a strong grip, and the person just like either grabs their own arm or they grab their leg, and it just feels like iron. But I feel, a lot of people, they like to make the chess analogy in jiu-jitsu. And a lot of them I agree with, a lot of them I disagree with. But, if you look at Kimura as a chess analogy, as soon as you get a Kimura grip on your partner, you have just checked them, because, you can just hold on to it and, you're attacking them, right? And they're automatically on the defensive. So from the strategic and philosophical perspective, it's just a way to attack somebody, and that's just a start. And beyond that, you can use it for, if you're on the bottom, you can use it for sweeps, you can use it for back takes, you can use it for arm bars from the top, you can use it to pass the guard, you can use it to reverse takedowns. So it's such a versatile position, and I think it's a very strong threatening position too, because let's say you're on top of half guard and you go for a Kimura, the person on the bottom, they may be super strong, but they still have to respect it as a valid submission threat. And while they're respecting the valid submission threat, then the guard is open for you, and then you just use it as a guard pass. So I think in a way it becomes such a versatile and such a strong position and submission as well afterwards.
I wanted to talk to you about competitions in general. We're primarily, I would say, a mixed martial arts combat sports site. We definitely are very heavily involved in Muay Thai and all the other combat sports as well. But when we talk about MMA, there's fight camps, there's game planning, there's all that stuff. And jiu-jitsu obviously is a lot different in the sense that there's a lot more tournaments, and there are individual super fights organizations that come up and all that stuff. Do you think there's going to be a trend more towards super fights in the future, where we're going to see more fight-specific camps come up, a lot more watching tape and game planning for specific opponents in jiu-jitsu? Do you think they'll make that turn towards more of an MMA style of competition, or do you think they're really going to stick with the tournament style first? And then if they stick with the tournament style, do you see fight-specific game planning as important even in those tournament style matchups?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And actually, I think it's going to veer towards more super fights, as you said, for two reasons. The first is it was already kind of leaning towards that already. Like before, when I just started jiu-jitsu, I started in 2006. There were just there was Grappler's Quest, there was Naga, and there was IBJJF. These were pretty much your three choices. A little bit later, I heard about Long Island Pride, and that was pretty much it. And within the past couple of years, we see like Fight to Win, we see Third Coast, we see Polaris, we saw Metamoris. That was a little bit of a disaster, but it was there. We see so many of these tournaments coming up, and and little by little, as I went to IBJJF tournaments, I saw less people there. And I think that was for a couple of reasons. Number one was because there were so many of these new tournaments that are coming up, and number two, because I think the IBJJF was kind of growing a little bit too quickly. In 2009, 2010, there was one New York Open a year. And like I remember one New York Open I tried to sign up for, and I missed the registration, and Shaolin almost ripped my head off. He's like, dude, there's only one a year. Like, how did you miss this registration? And now like there's like 4 or 5 out or something. There's like so many New York Opens. So I think they were just growing too fast. So I think that's going to be, this is one thing that was happening. The second is, right now with the COVID-19, I'm not even sure when we're going to be able to have these large scale tournaments where there's thousands of people, competitors and spectators. So for this reason, and because a lot of those little tournaments that were like sub only and kind of on one-on-one super fights started to come up. I think for those two reasons, that's going to be the future. And with that said, I think as we become more professional as fighters, we have to do tape study, and we have to study our opponents. We have to be knowledgeable. It's no more just going in blind. This kind of like old school mentality of I'll fight anybody anywhere. This hasn't been gone since 1985. So I think we have to evolve, and as you said, we have to start studying our opponents, making real camps, being real professionals about this.
Do you think I mean, we know that there are a lot more tournaments that pay now. Do you think with the more that happens, that's going to quicken the pace towards that as the pay scale for competitors increases?
I mean, to be honest with you, yes and no. The problem is this. The problem is that same as how IBJJF started to really grow and started to try to be like, provide too many events. In my opinion, I think a lot of these smaller sub-only tournaments, they saw the trend and they jumped on the bandwagon. And a lot of them are not that ethical. They make you sell tickets. And if you don't sell tickets, they penalize you and they hound you for these tickets. And a lot of them are not very kind, to be honest with you. And unfortunately, most fighters are, they don't have that much money. They don't know how to stand up for themselves. They don't know how to negotiate. They know how to do a berimbolo and they know the 411, but they get taken advantage of. And, I think this is kind of very sad. And I think what we need more legitimate tournaments that don't care about money and don't care about just jumping on the trend and actually want to promote the sport. And this is what we need. And fortunately, there have been some tournaments that came up that are ethical that I support. But we definitely need much more of that to push this forward, and keep the sport evolving.
To go along with your point, you're a veteran of EBI, of course. Do you think there'll ever be another tournament like that gained so much popularity that quickly for jiu-jitsu athletes that helped launch the careers of guys like Eddie Cummings, Gordon Ryan, to a certain extent, Craig Jones?
What happened with EBI was interesting because I was going to compete in the IBJJF World Championship, so I was going to be in California, and I had a friend of mine, Jamie. And he's like, hey man, Eddie Bravo's gonna do a tournament. I can refer you. Do you want to do it? And I was like, Eddie Bravo tournament, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. But I was kind of skeptical. And then when I did the first one, I did the very first one, I was still skeptical because I was like, man, this is so crazy. Like, if there's no submission, someone's gonna start on my back, someone's gonna start on an armbar on me, and we're gonna be on a stage. Like, it was so different in a good way than anything that I've ever experienced. And I think that is why it blew up the way it did, because people were like, whoa, like what is going on? This is so different than everything that's everybody's used to. So I think, something super, super drastic right now has to happen. I don't know, like, uh, you know, I don't even have any ideas that are, PG-13 that come to mind right now. But it has to be something kind of radical and drastic for something like that to take off. And, Eddie Bravo is, a revolutionary, and, he's one of the best things to happen to jiu-jitsu. And we need more people like him. I wish, there would be more, Eddie, regular jiu-jitsu tournaments. I know he's now focusing on combat jiu-jitsu, but, I wish he comes out something out of his, magic hat and, throws something at all of us with, something new and fresh.
Oh,
and you just talked about sorry, Ben.
I was going to say Eddie's definitely not going to be short of any ideas, considering the enhance. If there's a performance enhancing drug for the mind, he's found it. So and is on it. So I'm sure that he'll come up with something crazy.
Yeah. And you just spoke about the EBI rules. What's your favorite rule set? We have Gordon Ryan advocating for combat wrestling rules. Some people like the IBJJF. Some people like EBI. I know BJJ Fanatics did a tournament with EBI rules. What's your preferred rule set?
I think the best rule set is ADCC by far. I think it's exciting. I think it's kind of very fair, where you can take a lot of risks in the beginning, and you're not going to be penalized for these risks. I think it encourages takedowns. I like that every submission is legal. I think it's the best rule set by far. A lot of fighters, Gordon and many others, they advocate for like old school style, like no time limit, sub only. I think that's really cool. And yeah, it proves, again, who's the best submission artist. And yeah, we're doing a submission sport, but it also turns into like an endurance match, which, I loved personally watching Keenan and Gordon go for like an hour and a half, but at the same time, it's not the most realistic thing too, right? So I think that's cool, but I definitely think, ADCC, is the best of both worlds, and, the fairest as well.
And do you think that's applicable to gi as well, or just solely for no gi?
Absolutely. I think it can be, why not? I think it could be applicable for a gi as well, and I would love to see a gi tournament that follows that format as well.
Quick question. I hear both sides of this, but slams, just in general, what's your position on slams? Both to get out of a submission, off a takedown or throw. Are you for them, against them? Do you think it's important for schools to teach you how to defend or protect yourself from them?
Yeah, I think and I'm the most guilty of this as well. But sport jiu-jitsu, it became a huge abstraction where, you don't need takedowns to win. You don't even need submissions to win. A lot of people are winning fights with advantages and with strategy, and this is, great. This is how the rules were intended. But, if, to Gordon's and many other people's point, where, like the reason for the no time limit sub only is to show who the best submission person is. Also, with that said, we should remember this is a fight. So because of that, I think slams are super, super legit. I think we should all be conscious of them. We shouldn't just like look at the referee like, you can't slam me. They're having the referee save us. And I saw when I was starting jiu-jitsu, I saw Ricardo Arona doing the slam, and that opened up my eyes. Like, yeah, when somebody's picking me up in a triangle, I need to know what to do when so I don't get slammed. So I think we should learn it in a safe way, and I think it should be taught and understood by everybody.
A question that I asked actually at Marcelo's once, and it was got interesting looks. Cheating. What's your position on cheating and getting away with it, obviously, to win? Because in MMA specifically, you win, then you double your payday. So it's very common to see fighters take advantage of the rules in the best way. If they're going to get taken down, they grab the cage. If they can get away with an eye poke, they'll get away with it. If a leg kick goes a little high and hits you in the groin, they're not going to be sad about it. And there are some fighters that are notorious for their cheating. While I understand it wouldn't be popular to be known as someone who cheats, do you think that are you necessarily against an athlete who is maybe in a position where if they win that tournament, they get thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to win?
Yeah, my answer probably is going to surprise you, but my view on cheating and my view on steroids and my view on all of this is pretty, I don't really care about it. I think one of the best things about fighting and about martial arts is how it's all about you, and it's about, your performance. It's about, what you're doing. And if we just focus on the other person all day, I don't think that's going to get us very far. And, that's on them. If they want to cheat, if they want to use steroids, if they want to do whatever, that's their choice. And I don't really care. And if they get caught, good. And if they don't get caught, hopefully they lost. And if they won, then good for them for not getting caught.
Matt, I know you wanted to bring up, we should absolutely discuss the founding of Master Skaya, your philosophy on a donation-only gym, which is incredible. So Matt, please.
Yeah, where did the idea for starting a donation-only gym? I believe you guys are still the first and only to ever go down that path. Where did that idea come from? Actually,
there's been quite a few. Mike Fowler, I think, has a donation-based gym now. There's a few. There's one, I think, in North Carolina, maybe. I forgot exactly, but there's been a few. And just to kind of give a quick, something important to say is, Master Skaya is, a lot of people, they say, oh, it's the donation-based gym. And I'm really happy about that. Van and I, we speak about that often. We're really happy to do something nice. But really, it doesn't really matter. Donation-based is just one way to make jiu-jitsu affordable and accessible. And, that's kind of what we believe in. We don't believe that it should just be, for only the upper class or people that are wealthy or people that are well off, which it kind of evolved into for whatever reason, Like a jiu-jitsu tournament is $100. A gi is like $150. Seminars are over $100. In judo, it's different. In judo, tournaments are $30, $40. Gis are $40, $50. Everything is so much different. And, I'm not sure why that happened to jiu-jitsu. And the donation-based idea just, I used to go to this place called Yoga to the People. Maybe you guys have heard of it. And they're donation-based. And I thought it was really cool because I couldn't really afford it. And, I would just give a few bucks, here and there. I'll give the $10 suggested whenever I could. And I really liked the no pressure. And I was like, man, this is a really, really cool thing. And I was like, man, maybe we should do this in jiu-jitsu. And then, originally I opened up the school with my good friend Ivor, and Van came on a little bit later. And Ivor and I had different programs. And, Ivor did his own thing and I did my own thing. And I was just like, here's a box. If you guys want to, put some money, put it in. But I just want to teach jiu-jitsu. I don't really want to, chase people or sell people. And, in that way it became a kind of a win-win for both, myself and the students.
And I know you have a relationship with Google. How did that come about?
Google, so there was a friend of mine. He became my friend. His name is Dan. He's from California, and he would travel to New York to train. And we started to do a few privates. And then one day I was just talking to him. I was like, "Oh, how come you're always in New York or whatever?" And he was like, "Oh, because I'm working in Google." And I think just jokingly, I asked him, I was like, "Oh, you think you can get me in there?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna try." And the thing is, I'm used to this already, but so many people make empty promises that I never, I just never care almost, and if it happens, it happens. It doesn't, I don't really mind. And I just didn't even expect it. But, Dan, he jumped through like a lot of like, I'm going to be eternally grateful to him because he jumped through a lot of hoops. He connected me to the founder of the club, or not, maybe not the founder, but the head of the club named Lowell. And then, Lowell introduced me to the managers, and then like it was just like a whole, chain. And then, they ended up hiring Van and myself. And it's, been one of the coolest experiences in teaching jiu-jitsu that I know I've had.
Yeah, and I've seen your partnership with VHTS. How did that come about as well? Because it seems like you're very connected within the jiu-jitsu world.
Yeah, I think that, there's this like meme that goes around on the internet that like says like, why are you gonna, go pay $500 for a Kanye West concert and you're not gonna support your own friend? Like all of these kind of things. And that's why like I love supporting like RC and Focus brand and, all these other companies. But VHTS, his name is Guy. And, I know him since he's a white belt. Before he even started the company, he used to train at Shaolin's, and we were always close friends. And when he started the company, I was like, let's do it. I'm going to help you. And I think, I was one of his first sponsored athletes. And then, he just blew up, and, I've been just enjoying seeing his success. And, I'm really proud to support him from the very first day when, he was just, like a nobody. And now he's like a really huge company. And, it's really, really cool to be a part of that.
Ben, you have anything?
Just wanted to make sure that you were.
Yeah.
So I wanted to specifically ask you about Master Skaya and the. I wanted to ask if there's any difference that you perceived, or at least from when you started maybe to now, in teaching in an environment that is donation based only. Because when you pay for a gym, you're already the dynamic changes, I would say. Whether let's say I went to a gym and I happen to know the gym owner and I became a part of their gym, whether I'm friends with them or not beforehand, there's now a difference in the relationship in the sense that I'm paying for a service he's providing. He's my instructor. I'm his student. I'm paying him for that service, whatever it might be. It could change that relationship. And obviously when I'm learning in that class, there's that dynamic of instructor and student. Mm-hmm. Did you experience, when you first started Master Sky, did you have a different or experience anything different in the way you had your master instructor relationship with Vitor or Gene with your students, I guess, at Master Skaya?
Yeah, it was very different, and it's even, you just mentioned to me and embarrassed me slightly because you were like, hey, you remember me? Like, I kind of remember you, but not really, and it's
all good.
And that's the issue because since we have no, I am not like super famous like Marcelo and like Henzo and like Shaolin. So like those gyms, yeah, they have an influx of visitors, but almost all other small gyms don't really have that. I think they just have like their solid core where everybody knows each other. But Master Skaya, because we have this kind of like no contracts and we have all these, everything is a drop-in basically. We have such a huge influx of visitors, and we have people from all the academies in New York City training with us that drop in, like some people, once a week, some people once a month. We have people from so many places that are, coming in. So I think that was a really cool thing, meeting so many people. And, somebody once gave us a compliment. They were like, hey, you guys are kind of like Switzerland, you're kind of like just cool with everybody. You're like, yeah. And we have like a lot of black belts, a lot of brown belts. Like Matt will tell you, we have so many visitors that come in from all over the place. I don't even know who these people are or how they found out about us, but I love it. And, I'm so fortunate to have them drop by and, share techniques with us and roll with us. And I think that's kind of like the coolest thing. So I would say we are like a regular school, but we're also kind of like a club. And we're also like just like an, huge open mat at the same time where, people can just come in whenever they want to.
You're kind of like sorry. I would just say you're kind of like that. In all these, no one will watch it, but you're kind of like that island in the middle that everyone could just kind of like, okay, no gym drama here, no this. You train at this school, you train at that school. Who cares? We're all here together. We train and we go back and we can hate each other afterwards. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the privilege of training with Master Sky this summer, and I can't agree more with Alex said. It felt like family. And that's all you can ask for a jiu-jitsu gym.
And you have 2 locations now, so that's actually pretty something worth noting, is that you've managed to make 2 donation-only locations.
Yeah.
How are you? Do you own the building that it's in? Do you own the area that it's in? Is it someone who's just being really generous with rent? How is it working? How is that working out?
Things would be a lot easier if I owned it. If my original idea, like and I think it's good that it didn't happen. Maybe, or maybe one day it will happen. But my original idea was to be like Mr. Miyagi, like, and this is for real. I'm not joking. But my original idea was to find a place where I live. I live in the place, and it's 24/7, and people can just come in and train whenever. Like there would be kind of organized times to train, and there would be no monetary payments. Like you can't pay for the classes or anything like that. There would be no money, and you would barter with people. So somebody, like, let's say somebody makes bread. Okay, they bake bread for you. And like, let's say somebody's a yoga instructor. Okay, they're going to teach you yoga. So it's like a huge bartering system. And since I live there, like, it wouldn't be that much of a burden on me. And then I would, find, a way to, make up for the rent or whatever. But yeah, probably not the greatest idea I've had. And I don't know if it will be sustainable. But that was kind of my original idea. But just reminding me of it, since you asked to find the building. But we don't own the buildings. And we pay rent like everybody else. And we did have to make a change because in the very beginning, some people didn't donate at all, unfortunately. And so then we try to be as honest to everybody as possible. But I think what people misunderstood is I wrote like the class is a suggested donation of $10. People thought I think that it's either $10 or nothing. And for whatever reason, a lot of people didn't pay, and we were still able to survive because I had some close friends that really believed in the vision and that supported me behind the scenes. So I was able to pay the rent and stuff like that. But later we changed it slightly. So some classes have now suggested donation, and some classes have minimum donation. So the minimum donation is still $15 per class. So it's still 2 or 3 times cheaper than any other class in New York City. And more than half of our classes are suggested donations. So people can come and still pay nothing or pay whatever. But that's how we're able to stay afloat, and that's how we're able to pay all the instructors. No one works for us for any favors. And we're very proud of that. And, that's how Van and I are able to support ourselves as well.
Do you want to expand it further? And if yes, where would you like to expand next? Because right now you have DeKalb Avenue, which is in downtown Brooklyn, I think. And then you have Bushwick as well. If you have a place where you'd like to go next, where is it? No specific places. Do you want a 3rd, 4th, 5th location to make this kind of you can make it, hopefully. That'd be amazing. If you could pull off a donation-only chain of gyms across the country, that'd be fantastic. But what is your vision for the...
No, actually, we were working before the closure of the current situation. We were on our way to affiliate with more locations and open up more locations. A lot of people support us and believe in our vision, and they believe in us, which is really cool. Van and I are partners in it together. I don't know if he agrees with me. I think I say it and I'm just it's kind of like my dream. He supports it, but I don't know if it's also his dream is what I'm just trying to say. But actually, I haven't talked about it to many people, but what I want to do is open up in South America and Southeast Asia, and have, and that's actually just a selfish thing too. All right, let's go to Dominican Republic, and train for a few months, and also Southeast Asia. I really love Thailand. I haven't been to the Philippines yet, but that's my dream to go over there. But it'd be kind of cool to be based out of New York, America. And both of those places make a little, pyramid.
I have to ask about your MMA fight because, we have to. Tell us about that. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy training for it? Tell us about your training, where you trained, how long you trained before it, whether you would ever do it again.
Yeah. So, my MMA journey was kind of it was a little bit difficult because what happened was I decided I wanted to do MMA, and I was already a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. So one of my mentors and coaches, Charlie, he's a Muay Thai coach. he was like, hey, like I'm gonna train you, and then you should, train in Muay Thai with Koban, who's a living legend, and unfortunately he just closed his gym. But that's why I went to train, and I started training there, and I actually started fighting in Muay Thai. I had 5 Muay Thai fights, and then actually went to Thailand, and I lived there for a few months to train. I really fell in love with Muay Thai, and after that, I was like, all right, let me do an MMA fight. And I think Shaolin had just given me my black belt actually. So I was like in this weird spot where, my coaches didn't think I was ready to have a pro fight. And they were like, okay, just do like a couple of amateur fights and then maybe you can go pro. And I was training in Long Island MMA. And what happened was like all of my like fights kept getting canceled. Like I kept scheduling MMA fights, and people would pull out or people would not accept it because on paper it was not a good fight. Like I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and it's like why would they fight me? And I'm an 0-0 in MMA, so I just couldn't get a fight. And the only person that fought me was this young kid. He was maybe 18 or 19. His name was Turpal, and he's in a good way, like a crazy kid from K Dojo. He's like one of these like really, I don't know if he's from Dagestan, but he's from one of the, one of those countries like in Eastern Europe. And he didn't care. And he came and, he beat me up on the feet. And actually I ended up popping his arm, I think in the second round, and he didn't tap. And I was like, blood was all over my face, and, he cut me up pretty nicely. And in the third round, I ended up going for that same arm. And I got a Kimura on that same arm, like a straight arm lock Kimura, and he actually tapped because his arm was already, the ligaments were already, I think, torn. So that was my one and only fight. And, I had this, this huge scar under my eye. And that night I went to, my ex-girlfriend and I, we came into Manhattan, we went to Dunkin' Donuts, we ate some donuts, and then we went to the hospital, to get it stitched up. And then that, definitely it was an experience. Like it was much easier thinking about it from my couch than being in there, fighting. And I have the utmost respect for MMA fighters and for old people doing those camps. That's no joke. That takes, a lot of hard work.
Do you, based on that experience, I'm assuming it's fair that the way you spoke about that, it sounds like that was the last fight you're going to be doing?
Well, what happened was at this point, I was just training full time, and I was teaching my own program in Koban's Muay Thai gym. I was teaching a jiu-jitsu program, so I was able to go to Long Island MMA. I was able to train jiu-jitsu with Shaolin, and I was able to train Muay Thai with Koban. And what happened was I had some issues in Koban where I decided that I should like teach on my own. And then I opened up Master Skaya, and then I was training for a fight, and I got hurt. So the fight got canceled, and then, just running the gym just became too big of a responsibility, and I didn't feel like I could properly train to fight in professional MMA. And, another close friend and mentor of mine, would call me all the time and be like, Alex, stop being stupid. You're the only thing you have is your brain, so stop getting hit in the head. And, I thought about it, and I started doing more like pro jiu-jitsu fights. And I'm glad I did that one MMA fight, but I probably won't do another one, but that may change. Who knows? I still have the itch. I'm still like shadow boxing when nobody's looking. So, I still have that itch.
Matt?
You spoke glowingly of your time in Thailand. Do you follow any Thai fights today still, or is it just a past hobby?
No, I like for me, like and I hope this doesn't get taken out of context or gets taken the wrong way, but for me, watching like Muay Thai pad work videos is like equivalent of porn. Like late at night, I'm watching just like hours of just like Muay Thai, like slow. I don't even know who these people are. I have no idea. Random people in Thailand and people all over the world like doing pad work, and I love doing pad work. I love sparring. I don't follow the sport as closely as I follow jiu-jitsu, but I'm just always watching highlights. I'm always watching random fighters. I know a lot of the past fighters from 10, 15 years ago. I know a couple of modern fighters, but I'm not like that actively following it.
Matt,
I think you and Ryan would get along pretty well.
Yeah, you got to send him some of Ryan's articles. Ryan is we have a Muay Thai Enthusiast would be an understatement.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, the articles he's put together are just unreal. Like, he's so good.
I can't state how amazing they are. He makes you want to be a better writer. So, but I'll definitely I'll definitely send you some of his Muay Thai work.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a blast. So I don't have any more questions, but I do. I guess the last thing I would ask you is, God willing, all this passes sooner than later. And I'm assuming, like you said, there's going to be some super fights and stuff like that. Before this happened, was there anybody who you had your eye on? Not necessarily might be in the limelight, or a huge name right now, but somebody who you see there's somebody to keep an eye on coming up in the jiu-jitsu world.
That I wanted to fight or that I study?
Let's do both.
That I wanted to fight. I don't have anybody. I don't really look at it like that. Again, as I mentioned previously, I look at martial arts and I look at as myself as a competitor. It's purely internal, And when I go to a tournament, it's purely to test myself. And whoever's in front of me is just whoever's in front of me, and I'm just trying to do my game on them. When I study them, it's just some things that I should be alert about, but I don't like dwell too much about it. So I don't have anybody that that comes to mind, in that respect. As far as people that I study, I study a lot of people actually. I've been studying a lot of the Rotullo twins. I think they've been super interesting in how they utilize super basic guard passing to neutralize and beat a lot of top leg lockers and a lot of top guard players. And also they're some of the only ones that are doing some pretty intricate foot trapping and angles and different guard pass chains. So I was watching a lot of them as up and comers. Also, I mentioned briefly before, William Tackett is somebody that I watched quite a bit before. Other than that, it's probably all the other people that everybody else studies too. I think highly of a lot of the Henzo Danaher people. I think very highly of our Australian friends. I think John Thor Blank is somebody that's extraordinary to study. I really love his game. And I think some people that to study that people forgot about are like the Mendes brothers, Cobrinha, Leo Vieira, some of these people that are, way ahead of their time, are also worth looking into as well.
Yeah, not to start a whole other metagame conversation, but you just talked about how the Rutolo brothers were able to avoid leg locks using primarily their Darce and front headlock game. Do you think that is going to become more prominent as a way to not avoid leg lock exchanges, but to at least even the odds for someone who's potentially not as comfortable in those positions?
Yeah, I think if we were to take a Muay Thai analogy and flip it to jiu-jitsu, actually I make quite a bit of striking metaphors, and the reason is that I think striking is just kind of easier to understand even for a day one white belt. Sometimes jiu-jitsu is just too intricate, what's going on. But for example, in Muay Thai, we have punches, we have kicks, we have knees, and we have elbows, right? And let's say somebody is a very strong knee or an elbow fighter. All right, kick them and teep them and keep them at bay. And let's say somebody's really good at kicks. Okay, close the distance and knee them and elbow them. It's it's a two-way street, right? So I think what was happening is a lot of the leg lockers, they were what was happening is when people were fighting a leg locker, they were trying to just leg lock each other. It would just be leg lock for leg lock, kind of back and forth. And people were trying to see who can catch each other first. And that's kind of the equivalent of, a kicker against a kicker, a puncher against a puncher, or a person that's elbowing against a person that's elbowing. But I think what you said that I agree with completely is, yeah, you can use chokes to fight against leg locks, or you can use back takes to fight against leg locks, or you can use arm locks to fight against leg locks, putting yourself in positions where you're threatening the person. If I have a kimura on you, and it's going to be much harder for you to set up a leg attack. You first have to strip the kimura grip before you can start to go for leg entanglement on me. And I think the Rotullo twins We're doing a great job with, the front headlock, the Darces, anacondas, and all that kind of stuff. So I agree completely, and I think we should see more of that as well.
Essentially, don't fight them where they're best.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Or be under the assumption that you're just a little bit better at them, and you'll catch them slipping. Which can work too.
Where can everyone find your stuff? Your Instagram. I know you're a Grappler's Guide expert. What's the best way to get in contact with you? To visit Master Skaya?
I'm the easiest person to find. I'm in Brooklyn all the time. So these days you can find me in Prospect Park a few days a week. Before that, you would find me in one of the two gyms. I was, teaching and training 7 days a week. But as far as the internet goes, my Instagram is Alex Master Skaya. And Master Sky is spelled the word master, the word sky, and the letter A. And you can also email me at A and then my last name, which is Ecklin, @gmail.com. Actually, a lot of people think my last name is Master Sky, but it's not. But yeah, so definitely you can email me. I stopped giving my phone number out because I get too many late night texts about leg locks. So I stopped. But yeah, email me and I'll answer promptly.
Matt, before we go, anything you want to plug?
I have a Andros Bernofkis omoplata article that should be out soon. Grateful the Fight Site hired me to be a writer. And then there might be a Calcor Galaxy breakdown with his fights with Sun Kill Moon. So just be on the look for that. Alex, I can't thank you enough for doing this. And I'm happy you're the first jiu-jitsu guy we have on our podcast.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Matt. Matt, happy birthday. Everybody, it's his birthday. All right.
I can't wait to come back and train at Master Sky.
Absolutely. I think we're both on the same page there. Thank you both so much for joining. Ben Cohn, this was the Fight Site. This was another one of I would say this was an awesome interview. Make sure you check out the site. Great articles, great content. Check out the Fight Site on Patreon. Support us if you can. And if you can't, tell your friends. Maybe they can. Make sure that you all stay safe. Social distancing. Listen to doctors and medical advice as much as you can. If you have symptoms, make sure you call your doctor, see what they tell you to do. Everyone stay safe. Thank you both again for joining me, and have a great night.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. You guys too.
Take care.